So the Motor City is finally allowed to go bankrupt yesterday, almost 6 months after Detroit filed to go bankrupt. A judge allowed the process to go through over the heads of a lot of creditors who weren't particularly happy. Kevin, you've been looking at this. You're in from Chicago with us this week, been looking at Detroit. What's your take on what this all means for both the city and more broadly for cities around the US?
Well, first for Detroit, this is a huge step forward. It means that the city's going to be able to go through this workout of its debts. It's got $18.5 billion of debt. It can't afford to pay it. The city's crumbling. The streetlights are going out. Its police force is stretched to the limit. It needs some way of freeing up money to be able to manage to be a real city and to give itself a fighting chance of survival. So it's great for Detroit. It means that investors, along with current city residents and pensioners, are all going to probably be brought in to have to share some of the financial pain.
Now, this is the one big issue that's standing out, the pensions issue that I think you went into a bit in the piece and we talked about as well.
Yes.
Pensioners who had worked for the city, who had given up Social Security as a result, are now left maybe having to give up some of what's going to be a relatively meagre pension anyway. I mean, how does that play out? How is that meant to happen?
There are a little over 20,000 public employee pensioners in the Detroit system. It's a lot of people, but it's not nearly as many as the 700,000 current city residents who live there, who are having to put up with really deplorable conditions, a deteriorating city.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a huge dilemma, because the dilemma is, do you shred pensions or do you keep Detroit an almost impossible place to live?
Well, this is a big deal, Kevin, as you know. I mean, this is an issue. This is a big constitutional issue. I mean, on the one hand, you have states like Michigan and California whose constitution says, hey, pensions, man, off limits. And yet you have the bankruptcy court, whose job, of course, is to make everybody take a haircut. There's a real constitutional issue. This is the first judge, the first bankruptcy judge to say that pensions are on the table. This is going to be big news for places like Stockton, California, San Bernardino, California, where they've, knuckled under basically to CalPERS and said, we're not going to touch your pension.
So, where do you see this one going further in the courts, at least with the?
Well, they've already said the unions and other creditors have already said that they're going to appeal, and I mean, this could very possibly go to the Supreme Court. Yeah. And, if not in this case, in other cases as well. But
what does it mean? Other cities will be looking at this then thinking, okay, we don't just necessarily want to do this with our pensions, but my God, this could help us.
I think that is a ramification of this decision. It's going to lead to ripple effects far from Detroit. Other stressed cities, other cash-strapped places will start to say, hey, look, we've got a bargaining chip here. If we can go to our labor unions and retirees and say, look, you guys, we really need to sit down and work something out, because pension cuts will be on the table in bankruptcy if this Detroit decision stands up on appeal.
Yeah, I mean, it gives them more leverage. I mean, we kind of have to keep it in perspective, because, I mean, this is one bankruptcy judge who's not all that high in the hierarchy of federal judges. I mean, it's not really precedent, but, it's the first step, and I think you're right that it's really going to have ramifications across the board.
Let's look on the positive side for everyone, if we can, beyond the bankruptcy. Detroit, as with other cities, is at least away from the government side, doing relatively well with new people coming in, businesses coming. Shinola, I think, is one of your favourite ones, with hipster bikes and everything else going for $1,000 or whatever.
Yes.
So there is a degree of hope, at least, for these cities outside of government bankruptcy.
Well, you can buy a pretty big house in Detroit for $35,000 if you're courageous enough. And
you want to move there from Chicago already?
I'll stay in Chicago for now, but I do think, especially with this bankruptcy, it's going to take a lot more than just a bankruptcy ruling to get Detroit back on its feet. But at least this gives the city the breathing space it needs to really be a municipality as opposed to just a crumbling ruin.
Okay, well, Kevin, thank you. Ren, thank you as well. And we'll be back with more Breaking Views tomorrow.